Are we rolling? Great. Hi, everybody. How's it going, Rangers? I'm Jonathan Ying.
I'm AK.
And we're here to talk about the Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid scenarios today. And we'll be doing a bit of a retrospective, be answering a few questions. How you doing today, AK?
I am doing great for a Monday. It's a little more phenomenal, if I must say.
Yeah, I'm excited. So let's see. We're getting the Zoom thing set up. How's it going, everyone in Twitch? Let's see, everyone's chilling out. All right. So yeah, how do we want to start this, AK? We could dive right into talking about each scenario.
Would you?
We definitely can. I mean, can you believe it's been a year since we've had these scenarios like rolling out?
Yeah, it has been one full year, which, like, looking back on it, like, we were like, can we maintain this output rate? Can we, like, keep these things going?
Right.
And can we keep, the game interesting for, like, the full year? Like, I don't know, when we first started, we were like, okay, the game's probably got at least 2 years in it. Was our initial, like, kind of, that was, like, a fairly, that was honestly a pretty bold estimate, right? But like, it's totally, the community has absolutely blown us out of the water when it comes to player response and commitment and how deep they dig into the system.
Oh yeah, and then not just that, but it's like the replayability of it all. Like, you could just change things up, and I just gotta say, I am loving the themes of some of them, because it's like, hey, now that the fall season is back, like, hey, let's go revisit some of your old scenarios. Yeah, when the holiday season comes in, you can revisit some of these old scenarios as well.
I think it's almost been exactly a year since Scenario 1, right? Like, I think that was done in September.
Oh my gosh.
I think, yeah, like this... Wait, hang on. Was that on purpose? Hang on. I'm out of the loop. Okay, no. Yeah, okay. So, but yeah, I think like Scenario 1, we had Invasion, which I think we got a little pop-up tab for it. But yeah, the very first scenario of the game was one of the... it's honestly very simple at its core, in its core design. And, for the first scenario, I wanted to mix up the game a little bit, give it a little bit of theme, without going too far in bending any of the core rules, right? Like, I was under the impression most players were still fairly new. A big thing I wanted to do was to integrate the first expansion, Shattered Grid.
Yeah.
And kind of play with the storyline of Shattered Grid, which ended up sort of spanning the full length of the scenarios, like making a broad campaign that we touch on. Honestly, not unlike the show, where there's like wacky filler episodes, and then there's like ones that progress the plot.
Right.
But yeah, this one was kind of a fun one where it was like, okay, what if the foot soldier type changed over the course of the game?
Yes.
And it swapped from being like, okay, you start with your normal foot soldiers, and then Mastodon troopers started flowing in as Lord Drakon attacked, and then you've got Black Dragon as a boss. Who is like, Black Dragon is one of the slightly more challenging monster type enemies, so he was kind of a fun candidate as a boss. Black Dragon has certainly fought as a boss more than once throughout the different scenarios.
Right.
He's a really intimidating enemy in the comics too, which I really loved. Okay, have you read much of the comics?
I've read some of it here and there. I've kind of also listened to the podcasts that they had to just really get into it. I haven't finished it yet. It's on my to-do list.
Yeah,
but
I really like the Go-Go series, which just ended. The Go-Go Power Ranger series with the Mighty Morphin series has been really awesome too. Like, the Boom Studios has just been killing it with the comics. I'm so excited.
Yes. Yeah. And I love the fact that it's like, you kind of just gave us the challenge right out the door with the, like, going to the command center and everything, and just like giving a bunch of just challenges, like a good challenge right off the bat.
And that one is very much based, like, that is specifically based on a sequence in the comics where Black Dragon just blows up the command center and fights the Rangers, and it's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
like,
awesome.
Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite. That was like a nice. That was a great sequence that I really wanted to present in the game, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, right, we move on to scenario 2, Halloween Havoc, which I think we should all be playing. This Halloween. I think it'll be a fun thing to do with folks. This one was a bit of an indulgence, we'll say, on my part, because I love Pumpkin Rapper.
Yes.
I love Pumpkin Rapper. He's one of the dumbest, most 90s villains. And when I got the chance to do a scenario about him, I think like we even wrote a rap.
And
like,
I love like in the actual like when you download the scenario, like you even have the little raps that he says in between each round.
Yep, we compose like his spooky rap that is being chanted during the game. The funniest thing is that the last stanza of the rap only happens if you lose. But yeah, like, so that one was kind of an interesting one where it was like, okay, here are like some of the spooky themed monsters, right? It's Bones, Eye Guy, Pumpkin Rapper. Very Halloween. And then you've got the pumpkin tokens, which the patch tokens, which
that was cool.
Make you fight Pumpkin Rapper basically fight mini Pumpkin Rappers.
The mini Pumpkin Rappers, yeah.
Yeah, just like tiny angry pumpkins that just mess with you. That mechanic was a pretty interesting one because, monster type enemy cards are tougher than normal foot soldier cards. So, like, it just, at its core, the challenge rating is a little higher. Notably, I think in the beginning, I think in the original, this one was updated. I think when it was first released, it was way too hard. There was one typo.
Oh.
And the scenario was actually, so all the people who like played it like the day it came out were like, oh god, this is so hard. And it was that you do 5 deployments instead of 4, and the patch token.
Oh,
which just made it. Yeah, it was like you do full deployments and the patch token instead of having to.
It's kind of like setting out another monster.
Yeah, just getting another.
I mean, these was mini, but I mean, it was still another.
It just led to panic things so quickly, and that was like, I was like, oh shoot, I just couldn't. That draft just wasn't saved through, and we accidentally sent out one that didn't have that fix or didn't have that edit because we had that problem during testing of the scenario. And we were like, oh, right, we should fix it. And it just ended up not making it to graphic design or something until then. And then it came out and we were like, oh, no.
And that's the beauty about having these, like, on, like, the website. Because it's like, hey, we got to make a quick change. Let's go ahead and just make that change on there. Make it easier for everybody or make it more pleasant.
Yeah. Let's see. We got someone in the chat asking, what are our thoughts on creating a token set for Pumpkin's presence for the game that covers the first tier of scenarios? I mean, that's a really cool idea. I know a lot of fans are really have like gotten their own like tokens, or they use like those pumpkin marshmallow candies. And those look so good in the game, which is very funny to me. Like they really look like a proper component. But certainly it's a really cool idea and one that we might explore. Depending, but yeah,
it is.
How these things
I mean, you do use quite a few. I mean, I like the fact that you say, "Hey, use some pennies," and then like, we'll use them as different tokens throughout the thing. So that kind of leads us into the next scenario as well, with 3 when we go into the holiday spirit. With,
I think before that it's Mighty Morphin Mix-Up. Yeah,
Mighty Morphin Mix-Up. I apologize. Yes.
Yeah. November, right? Because you gotta save Christmas for December, right? I mean,
yes.
I know that all the marketing and all of the Christmas stuff shows up immediately after Halloween. But yeah,
that's true. Okay, let's track it back. Let's go back. I actually really like this one, the Mighty Morphin Mix-Up one.
Yeah, this one is a fun one. This one was one where we specifically limited it to core set characters. I think part of it was that the previous 2 scenarios required you to have expansions.
Yes.
And so we wanted to make sure that there are at least a few scenarios that you can play with just the base game and just kind of have some fun mixing it up. And that was unintentional, but yeah. So this is also based on a comic arc when all the Rangers accidentally get their powers switched when they go to a weird alien planet. And it was just kind of this neat thing of like, oh, hey, these, particularly for the Mighty Morphin Rangers, their character abilities are tied to their decks, but they aren't like mechanically like they're tied to their decks, but they're not shackled to their decks. You know,
Right.
Like we had been designed, we had the Zeo Rangers in development during this time, and I know that some of them were. Some of the Zeo Rangers are much more tied to their abilities. Like Tommy's thing all ties to the star icon showing up on his cards, right? Zeo Ranger 5. And so if you swapped his deck with a deck without star icon, suddenly his ability just doesn't work. And there are a couple more characters that are like that we wanted to, that we didn't want to have in this scenario. Otherwise, you could make the scenario apply to any type of character, but there are just some versions that don't play well. But this one, like, I think at its core is just one of the more fun, kind of silly ways to play the game differently and to just feel, mix up the feelings, right? And I think in particular this one, because it doesn't prescribe monsters or bosses or whatever, the challenge of it can really vary depending on how how balanced and how well you know the game, right? And how well you can play these decks.
And I think that with I actually brought this up to our Facebook group, which has been like really awesome, and you can tell that a lot of fans have like set characters that they just love playing, and it kind of makes you just like, okay, I haven't played Trini at all. Well, if you have everyone playing, like you could rotate around and you actually get to experience some of their the other Rangers' abilities.
And that's certainly that idea of getting to experience abilities from other decks, etc., eventually blossomed into Legendary Ranger mode, which has been very, very popular.
Yes. I know.
Yeah. Let's see. And then Scenario 4, right? Like this one, Christmas Chaos. I love the art piece of just like the Draken and Green Ranger fighting in the snow. But yeah, so this one was an interesting one where we actually kind of did two versions of it. So I'd initially designed it specifically to be based on I'm Dreaming of a White Ranger, which is a Power Rangers episode with Goldar and Rito and Lord Zed, right? Like, and it was, much more similar to the Pumpkin Wrapper scenario. But we decided like, oh, hey, you could do this just using the gift token mechanic and not have to prescribe expansion-only material, which is kind of what we ended up doing. So there's two versions of it. You can play it without the expansion and just play it with this scenario difference, which with the different command center, Santa's Workshop. And with the gift tokens, which I'm very partial to as a token type. And this one's quite fun. The Dreaming of a White Ranger variant is very challenging because you're fighting 3 bosses instead of 2 monsters and a boss.
Right.
Yeah, as well as fighting Tengas and Z-Putties, both of which are some of the more challenging foot soldiers even. So,
exactly.
Yeah, God, this one's real tough. I think we were joking about the fact that Santa Claus is a recurring character in the Power Rangers universe.
He tends to be.
Yeah, and so like the idea, the joke at the end of like Santa being like, maybe I could use a battleizer. Or no, actually, sorry. He jokes about getting a reindeer sword because he actually gets a battleizer in the Hyperforce.
Yes.
In the Hyperforce stream, like Santa shows up and gets a battleizer, which is just crazy. Let us know if you want to see Santa Claus as a playable character.
And we'll need the miniature for it.
Yeah, we're gonna need the miniature. Gonna need the sword card. Gotta get we'll get Dan Mora on it. No, that would be.
Or just go to your local shop and just like, I'm sure they have during the holiday season, get a little Santa figurine.
Yeah, right.
And
I mean, hey, that might be a fun thing for a scenario or something. But like, make the players make up their own deck. No, it could be a Red Ranger. I don't know. Christmas Chaos is one of the fun ones. I think people commented about like they were surprised we didn't do a Super Bowl themed one using Rhino Blaster, who's football themed. And partly it was like, do international if we do a football themed one, I feel like we've got some number of international fans who are like, "Oh,
What?
American football."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we ended up sort of shifting away from that over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we've got Scenario 5. This is actually one of the popular ones. Like, I think we did a poll a while back about scenarios people like, and I think Hidden Zords came up very high.
Was this a surprised one that you were kind of like, oh man, like people really responded well to this? Or did you really like, when you were creating this, you're like, yeah, people are going to love this one?
I think this was one where I was like, okay, you know, I hope people like it. I was not expecting the response to be as hugely positive for it, just because it's like, it's a fairly straightforward scenario, right? Like, it's just, hey, we've changed the way you unlock swords. Rather than going on the experience track, you actually have to dig them up. And part of this was to kind of bring up the idea, which was posited earlier, of, hey, what if we could just use any sword, right? Like, the Zords are, even, you know, partly because they're meant to be used in any location and to be used to support any ranger, it was a cool idea that we could, you know, encourage players to mix and match Zords with their rangers, right? So, like, you don't have to use the Tyrannosaurus with Jason. Maybe, you know, how would Jason play with the Bull Zord, or how would Jason play with one of the Hyper Zords? And this kind of gives you the opportunity to sort of pull up a Zord and see how it would interact with your kit and who wants it, and kind of gives you that grab bag feeling, right? Like, there's this element of surprise when it's like, oh, which sword is it? Oh, it's the Grave Sword. I want it. Like, yeah, this was a really fun one, and I think a lot of the best scenarios are kind of the more straightforward ones, the nice, simple ones.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the next one is also on that style. But yeah, I think, oh man, Zord card. Yeah, Dark Horde is one where it's just like, hey, look, we've got all these foot soldiers. The game is designed with fighting 2 foot soldiers at a time, so that you are encountering, so that you can eventually learn what you're up against and get a fairly reasonable sense of, like, you know, okay, these are putty patrollers. We know what putty patrollers can do. We know how to fight them. Having 4 different foot soldier decks along with the monster and boss decks was just really cumbersome in normal play. And, you know, we liked kind of the consistent theme of only dealing with 2 different kinds of foot soldiers at a time. But there are players who were like, yo, I want to fight all of them, though. Like, what if we played with all the different foot soldiers? And so this was one of those situations where it was like, okay, here's a way to do that, right? Like, here's a fun way to just encounter all 4 different foot soldiers, like, you know, 4 completely different foot soldier types at once, and not know which one's coming and, like, what the ratios are going to be. Interestingly, Dark Horde has one of the biggest difficulty ranges. Like, it can actually be much easier or much harder than a normal game. It spikes and bottoms out much more dramatically because of the way the decks are shuffled. You might get more 3s or more 1-drops of the foot soldiers than normal deck. And yeah, I think someone commented they love Dark Horde and they combined it with Double Trouble. Dark Horde and Hidden Zords are particular in that those, and even Mighty Morphin Mix-Up, like, several of the scenarios can just be played together, right? Like, there's no reason you can't play Dark Horde with the Mighty Morphin Mix-Up powers and the Hidden Zords at play. Like, you could just go nuts. I'm not necessarily recommending it because I'm flipping through 3 different rule sheets, but Power Ranger fans are nothing if not committed.
That is very true. We are.
And yeah, well, hey, speaking of Double Trouble, Scenario 7, which introduces the paired monster mechanic that would later become official in expansions. And this was sort of a test bed for it. Like, we were pretty sure we were going to do it, if only because, you know, like, Squat and Babu got to be a pair, right? You know, you want to fight them together. And, like, hey, some other monsters, like, are famous for being pairs, like the Fear Cats, or you know, Gaskin and Archerina. Like, several different opponents are, like, you know, you fight them together. That's, like, what makes them interesting. And so we kind of set up Double Trouble to be like that, with both Black Dragon and Ranger Slayer being the pair in this one. And let's see. Yeah, and in Double Trouble in particular, it has another example of a boss fight that gets kind of staged, where you fight one boss and then they get replaced by Lord Dragon.
Right.
Which is meant to match the theme of fighting two bosses, but you're not fighting them both at once. You're fighting them one right after the other. And yeah, so that one has been that's also a really fun scenario. I certainly encourage people to try out Double Trouble using different combinations of monsters. Like, you don't have to use Black Dragon and Ranger Slayer. You could use, fun combos that you like.
You could do like Goldar Scorpina or
yeah, absolutely, and that would be very challenging.
Yeah,
but fun. And then like you can swap out the final boss. Like, you can kind of mix it up, but we give you the template for that one right here. And then after that is Scenario 8, Goldar's Revenge. Scenario 8.
Speaking of Goldar,
is very we keep doing really good transitions. I'm happy for us.
I know, I love this.
But yeah, so Goldar's Revenge and the Super Mega Goldar variant there's two different game modes similar to Christmas Chaos.
Right.
So for Goldar's Revenge, we wanted it to be very thematic. We wanted to be like, okay, look, let's go in Goldar, Finster, Scorpina, like, let's have a good time. Notably, this one features Goldar, like Scorpina and Goldar are both on the slightly easier side for bosses. They are they are probably the easiest bosses in the game, I would say, comparatively to some of the super hard mode bosses like Drakon and Master Vile. But and they're by no means a cakewalk, but they are more straightforward. Scorpina has slightly less health. Goldar is not too wacky. But we wanted to kind of expect
that from Goldar.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of push that difficulty a bit with Goldar's Revenge, and we also wanted to feature the Mega Goldar Deluxe figure.
Yes.
Notably, Mega Goldar is also the easier of the two giant boss figures. Like, Cyclopsis is honestly a much tougher fight than Mega Goldar.
Yeah.
And kind of intentionally, because a lot of people buy these big box figures to kind of have a good time. And Cyclopsis was so brutal. There were a lot of people being like, I tried to play it. Like, people are like, I played it for the first time with my buddies, and we got annihilated. And that's And so Mega Goldar was kind of done as a slightly easier, more straightforward giant boss figure. And then Super Mega Goldar was meant to make him way harder, right? Like, it was like, for those of you, like, for the super experienced players, the testers of Mega Goldar were like, Mega Goldar's a little too easy. And I was like, yeah, but you guys are the hyper hardcores who like want this game to be Dark Souls, right? Like, they want the intense skill challenge of it. And so Super Mega Goldar turns regular Mega Goldar, who is about on par with, like, one of the bosses, into a super tough boss like Cyclopsis. So we were kind of using the scenario to bridge a best of both worlds type of situation, we hope. But yeah, man.
I kind of also imagine themselves since like, you'll have your Megazord pieces and then your Zords and your Megazord, hopefully by the time you get to Super Mega Goldar. But there's still a small part of me that kind of thinks, like, there's just Jason right there just hacking away at his toe.
Yep. A lot of people actually don't know where the design for Mega Goldar comes from, because in the show, it's when Goldar gets big, he's just huge.
He's just big.
But, but in the Mega Goldar sculpt actually has some design flourishes and actually like has a different sword, and like his armor's got a slightly different design. That actually comes from the Legacy Wars mobile game. They did a special design for Giant Goldar when they added Megazords as a mechanic. And we were talking to them, and they were like, and we were like, oh, this is a really cool design. And we really were like, it would be really cool is if we're like a foot tall miniature. They were super excited about that, and we were really excited to get that design and like kind of build that out.
And I love that combination of like, all right, here's another platform that other Power Ranger fans are able to play. Let's combine it with this, and seeing everyone just kind of go for that Mega Goldar look with the red armor and everything, like, has just been awesome. Just seeing it instead of just here's a giant Goldar, let's make them cooler.
Mhm.
You know, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Notably, someone did comment about like some Zords being.
Then we get into one of our more recent expansions for the next scenario here. Stronger Than Before, which I'm pretty sure you just kind of think of the theme song every time you're like, hey, let's go ahead and look at this. Stronger Than Before.
It's really hard for me to say the scenario title without singing it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so with the scenario, it's the Zeo scenario, right? It's hey, we just released the Zeo Rangers, like let's have some fun, let's do that big shift, because like I remember when I was a kid and like they did the big season finale where like the base got blown up and everyone's like, what, who's, oh god, like I was freaking out, and then they got new suits and they got like it was the whole thing, like it blew my mind. And so like we wanted to kind of have that passing of the torch moment with the Zeo Rangers. There's kind of one thing that was interesting though was just making the transition between Mighty Morphin and Zeo, while balancing flavor-wise the fact that the Zeo Rangers are also after a couple of roster swaps in the Mighty Morphin Rangers. So if you just have the base game, like Adam Park doesn't go from being Mighty Morphin Black to Zeo Green, right? Because you don't have Adam Park if you just have the base game. So you have to. So it's like this scenario is actually designed. If you look at the way, if you end up going into the scenario, the way you stack the cards covers up the name of the Zeo Ranger, and you keep your Mighty Morphin name. So it's kind of what if Zach Taylor became Zeo Green?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and technically because of the way it's structured, you actually any Ranger can become like does not necessarily become the Zeo Ranger they were assigned in the show. So like Jason might become Zeo Blue or Zeo Pink, like just depending on what Zeo Ranger gets. How the Zeo stack shakes out for them.
Yeah, and then when we find out more information about the legacy pack coming in, where you can actually start playing as Adam and Rocky.
I'm gonna be real excited to replay this scenario. You going just like full cannon, going really hard. Yeah.
But I think it would be challenging though if you're gonna be hiding the Zero Crystals, and I mean if you want to choose different Rangers, but I mean you could.
There are a couple of ways you could handle it. I think a lot of the show-based scenarios are interesting because like there's a lot of fun themes, like we've talked about maybe doing like a green candle scenario. Right, like, and there's a lot of fun themes we can go off of. A lot of them will require this or that expansion, and many of them are very focused on the Mighty Morphin team, right? Just because that's the set that we're guaranteed for players to have. I try and make I am the person who writes the flavor text for all these, so like I try and make sure that it's general enough that if you're playing with a non-standard team or you're playing with a mixed team or not necessarily playing with Zordon or with Zordon squad, that it makes sense. Though a lot of them, like it's like, okay, listen, you're in Angel Grove, it's fine. But yeah, the mixed setting of Heroes of the Grid has provided some flavor challenges, which is honestly part of why we didn't do a campaign in the base box. Which we are kind of somewhat revisiting that decision by making these scenarios, but going into that, we're going into scenario 10, which is I think the the break into Act 3, we'll say, right? Like this is things are starting to get bad and we're getting into before the climax of scenario 11. So Ranger Rescue this one is another scenario that is heavily inspired by the Mighty Morphin mix-up, right?
Right.
As you kind of gain abilities, but the idea in Heroes of the Grid, in the Shattered Grid storyline, of going through these dimensions and trying to rescue, Rangers who have been captured and taken by Lord Drakon and are fighting off this war, like while Drakon gathers Rangers and makes himself more powerful. The idea of modifying the Mastodon Sentry foot soldiers, or like encounters with them, with whatever Rangers are currently captured, You could go through the scenario and not rescue too many rangers, and things just will get harder and harder for you. This scenario was initially written to feed directly into scenario 11.
Oh, okay.
Players could do that, but we kind of decided it would be a little bit cumbersome to have them like linked inextricably, and like keeping track of what's what, and like making sure that this scenario ends with this many rangers being saved would be tricky. But the idea originally was that all the ranger cards that you rescue during this scenario are the standby rangers that you use in scenario 11.
Yeah.
Like, you've rescued them, and now they're helping you in the final fight. And that will lead into the big dramatic finish. So that's the scenario where, like, I think Ranger Rescue is one of my favorites to play. Just because the various passive effects kind of provide a really fun thing. And I find that players get really invested in rescuing rangers that they like. You know, it's like, oh god, it's Billy. We have to save Billy.
Right. You definitely do have that motivation.
Now we'll get to the wildest scenario we've done so far. Assault on Lord Draken. So this is like, I think it's like, it's like 2 solid pages of scenario. We couldn't even fit flavor text for the ending. This one.
Hey, you guys did your best. Yeah.
It was like, and this one is actually inspired by some fan content.
Nice.
Some fans did show like kind of this idea of setting up the board and like you could arrange the board rather than being in a circle. You could do it in like an arc. That kind of creates this pathway, and it really looks like you're like moving through. And it changes the game entirely from being defensive to being offensive, right? You are assaulting Lord Drakon. And, you know, you are taking the fight to the enemy as opposed to playing like this kind of tower defense situation. I certainly felt a lot of my Imperial Assault scenario design bones getting to play. But I, set up all the encounters. This one, I think, honestly got the most playtesting out of any of the scenarios. It just like, because we wanted to really get it right, because it's such a departure from the way the game is normally played, right?
Right.
Like, it is a series of encounters with like a limited life pool. It honestly feels a bit like a roguelike. I've heard it described as like, you're progressing through and trying to survive, and if you die, you have to go back to the start and try again. With slightly different monsters each time. So the idea of building this one up, I actually wanted to give it I was focused on building out the narrative arc in like 3-act structure. Like, in the broad terms, I was trying to build out for the scenarios in general. Like, if you look at them, they sort of conform to an act structure of like, you get this inciting incident of like, hey, Black Dragon shows up, but you beat him, it's okay. A couple of like shenanigans go on, and then things start getting darker, more difficult, harder, weirder. Then Double Trouble happens, and it's like, oh yeah, they're not done. And then, Goldar's Revenge, like stronger than before, has this command center blowing up. Ranger Rescue, everything is going dark, and then Assault on Lord Draken is the big climax, right?
It really is that formula of like a Power Rangers season, right? They get so dark, and you're like, okay, I don't know how we're gonna get through this.
And I love the idea of building up that arc, and like that kind of narrative arc, right? That narrative flow is something that I wanted to also put into the scenario itself, right? So at the beginning, the Resistance hideout is very easy. It's like, it's 4 putties, 4 super putties. Sure, it's 8 foot soldiers, but you guys can fight foot soldiers. You're completely fresh. It's not that hard. Then after that is like Mastodon Troopers, who are a little tougher, and hey, a random monster. That's like fine. And then after that, you get Ranger Slayer and a monster. It's 2 monsters at once. And not like a paired monster, you're literally fighting 2 full rows of monster cards.
Right.
Which is quite intense. And then you've got Black Dragon as this like final, he's literally the dragon for the big bad. And he's honestly a bit of a skill check. Like, Black Dragon could be considered a harder encounter than Lord Draken at the end. Particularly because if you do poorly against Black Dragon, Lord Draken becomes much harder.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think many games end on the Black Dragon fight just because, like, if not fighting him, by having so many losses against him, Lord Draken just annihilates you. And so, like, but if you can get over the hump of Black Dragon at the Zord Graveyard, then you get to take on Lord Draken, and it's this big finale battle where he's got all this, like, combined powers of all these Rangers. He hits like a truck, and you got this last stand thing. We were kind of going back and forth whether you wanted to have whether the game would just end if you've run out of Rangers for all players, right?
Right.
So if, like, you have 5 Rangers left and only 5 players left, once you lose one, oh hey, it's over, which is kind of how it works in the base game. I think at the end we just decided, you know what? If all players are eliminated, you lose, which lets you have a real last stand, like, hey, 1 Ranger left, to, like, let him, throw out the hits, like, and you can kind of let someone really be the hero.
And that really gets, I mean, just from playing just other tabletop type games like that, it's such a cool moment where everyone's just focused on, like, a one-on-one kind of situation. Or
it's great. It really builds up. I think we've had at least 2 playtests end on that, like, final Ranger. Yeah, and those were always really dramatic. And that, because when we were doing the test, it was like, okay, well, we lost because we, only have 4 Rangers left, and one of us is eliminated. Can we? And, like, they just really wanted to play it out. They want to be like, but I think we can still beat them if we push. And it's like, okay, fine, let's try it. And it was fun, so we kept it in the game. And yeah, that was like, Assault on Lord Draken is one that really tests your game knowledge, right? Like, what Rangers are you bringing? What combinations are you bringing? Who's on standby? Because the standby Rangers are the ones that you'll want to bring in later on in the fight, right? So you don't want to necessarily open with your strongest fighters. Which Zords you bring to the table. You're only fighting foot soldiers for, like, a few of the encounters. So, like, do you want to bring ones that are good at clearing foot soldiers, or do you want to focus hard on ones who are good at fighting bosses? It's been So
it really feels like it's like a good RPG. It's like it's like you kind of want to set things up the way you got to strategize it, and you're working with other people now, right? This is a co-op. It's not just a one-player RPG anymore.
Yep. This is the climax of the year, right? Like, we were building up to that, and we've got Scenario 12 coming next, which we can't talk too much about.
So, is there any kind of hints that you can kind of give us? That,
narratively, I think narratively, I'll say that Scenario 12 is the denouement, right? Scenario 12 is kind of the victory lap for making it to Scenario 12. It is, I think, I've had the testers tell me it is their favorite scenario. It is closer to, like, the Hidden Zords or Dark Horde in that it is actually it is a modified game mode rather than being a preset scenario, like preset encounter. So you can play Scenario 12 combined with other scenarios, or combined with any combination of enemies or monsters or what have you. But the rules change is very dramatic, I will say. But I know some players who, like, some of the testers are like, outside of testing, like, from now on, I am just playing the game Scenario 12 style. Like, there's at least one group who's like, this is my favorite way to play the game now. So I think that's an encouraging thought, and I hope people are excited for it.
Yeah. It looks like some people are asking, do you know? I don't know if you could tell us, but do you know if it involves any of the newest expansions that's coming out? I know we're all still waiting for the Psycho Ranger expansion, but
I will say it does not directly involve the upcoming expansions. Partly because it was designed before we knew when those were going to come out. Okay. Like, we kind of wouldn't want them to come out, like, too far before. It's fine if they come out later, but we will. This Scenario 12 is not designed with that expansion in mind, although it does play really well with that expansion. I will say, like, testing it with that expansion, I quite enjoyed it. It'll be pretty exciting. And
I can't wait to see where this narrative goes. Where you gave us such a great narrative so far, and it's like, where do we go from here? We're not just, like, running around Angel Park and just.
It really is. Scenario 12 really is kind of the capstone on year 1, and then going forward, we're gonna start like we'll have new scenarios. We might have a new story arc. I mean, you know, insofar as the board game has a story arc, but we'll, you know, after year one, which is technically 13 scenarios because there's scenario 0, which we haven't really talked too much about. But yeah, like going past that, we'll be exploring different things, and we'll see kind of where the arc of the game goes. I guess we could also touch briefly on scenario 0.
Okay, yeah.
Which was designed, scenario 0, or the intro scenario, it's Morphin time, which I had designed primarily because people want a good introduction to the game, particularly for non-gamers. Because I know a lot of players, like, you know, hey, they watch Power Rangers with their family or their friends, and like there's an appeal to this that isn't isolated to hardcore board gamers, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, there are some things where it's like, I'm not gonna get, I'm gonna have a tough time getting non-gamers into like Chaos of the Old World, right? But like Power Rangers, it's like, oh yeah, I know Power Rangers. Let's be Power Rangers. And the intro scenario was kind of made to make that transition a little easier, and it also was somewhat there to address some of the concerns in the early design foibles of the base game, particularly Pudgy Pig. In that it kind of allows you to, like, it's got Pudgy Pig in it, but it arranges the cards in such a way that Pudgy Pig is much easier to deal with.
Yeah.
Comparatively. And it also adds variant rules like Basic Attack and Last Stand, both of which I honestly highly encourage players to, you know, use in their normal games if they want. Like, in particular, like Basic Attack is probably a rule that should have been in the base game, but just ended up not. Like, if we do a second edition of the base game, I'll probably include Basic Attack as just a core mechanic, because it doesn't break anything and it makes the game play smoother, and like it is honestly one of my favorite kinds of variants, because it makes the game easier for players who have a difficult time without reducing the challenge for players who are really good at the game, right? Like, yes, it raises the game, the floor, without lowering the ceiling of possibilities. So that's kind of the main thrust of the scenario, and it's been, so far I think people have really enjoyed it, and it's done a good job of letting players get into the game, because I know when we first made it, we really emphasized how difficult the game would be. We wanted it to be a challenging game, and you know, not every player loves that, and also not every player wants to dive headfirst into a really challenging game. So players have always been asking, like, oh, is there a difficulty rating for the monsters or something, because I want to, you know, play against easy stuff in my first round to like get used to the game. This is kind of that intro, right?
Gateway,
let you in, like, make it simpler. And yeah, that's kind of I guess that's the big scenario retrospective.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of things that are kind of brewing in your head for like future scenarios? Any like favorite episodes that you're thinking about that like this would be a good scenario to make out in the future, or are these all secrets still?
I mean, there's definitely, I mentioned a couple early on. We may even talk about some more of them at Renegade Con on October 9th and 11th, which I was definitely supposed to mention at the beginning of this podcast and I totally forgot about.
We still got it. We got it in.
It's fine. We got it in. But yeah, Renegade Con. I think we can pop up a link in the Twitch chat. But yeah, Renegade Con, October 9th to 11th. I'm gonna be there. I think I'm doing a special workshop, which I don't know if we've announced. But I'm excited about that. It won't be about scenarios, but we'll probably talk about scenarios anyway, because they're a popular subject.
We love them.
Yeah. Do you got any more questions? Yeah. AK, do you have any more questions, or we could turn it to the audience?
Let's go ahead and look for the audience and see if there's anything else that you guys have any questions about. Let's see here.
We did have one earlier. I don't know if we addressed directly, but will we get a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger torch passing scenario after the new legendary pack is out?
I can't necessarily guarantee it. It would be a fun fit for the legendary ranger pack, to be sure. Although, like, you know, in some ways I wouldn't want to toe step with Stronger Than Before, which is kind of just, that is basically the theme of that one. Like, mechanically, it would basically just be that scenario, but with trying to get having a different gimmick for transferring the powers.
Okay.
The Sword of Light situation. But it's certainly not off the table. But I think there are a couple of other ideas that are taking precedence over it right now. I will say though, like I think I'm not sure if you'll need an excuse to play with the Legendary Ranger decks. Just because the Forever Rangers decks for the new Rangers are very cool. Again, like I think several of them are now some of the testers' favorite new characters. In particular, Rocky and Adam are really, really fun. And oh man, yeah, they synergize really well with the new powers. Let's see. Ooh, if we ever do an SPD set, would we consider making extra character cards to account for all of the promotions? Dragon Shield SPD Green. Oof. Man, that's going to be an interesting one because I do really love the Legacy of the Dragon comic arc, which features Tommy Oliver's son becoming SPD Green.
Right.
And getting the Dragon Shield in the SPD outfit, which is quite a look. I'm not sure. SPD is definitely one of the series that have the most alternates, right? Like, because of the structure of it, we actually, we see like, Sky like moves up the ranks and like different Rangers like hold different Ranger titles in SPD throughout the thing. And that would likely be a similar situation closer to the Replacement Ranger alternate character cards, right? We'd probably do a couple of different cards for each of the different versions of SPD Red. But yeah, we'll see if we do a Dragon Shield for SPD Green. That's certainly an interesting idea that I like. Though I might, if I was going to do a comic exclusive SPD Ranger, I'd probably go with Deca Ranger.
Ooh.
Yeah, his design is so cool. And we don't know what he does yet, but I could get to decide what he does. Like,
Mastermind, making it buttery.
Yep. Someone asked, they want to do a few of the scenarios, but they require Kickstarter exclusives. Will those ever be available for public purchase? We do post, I think the Kickstarter exclusive box actually has been reprinted a couple of times and gets posted on the Renegade website for sale. It's trickier to get for international people. That's, I think, the hard part. We are, I'm not directly privy to the business decisions. We did, part of the reason why we did the Forever Rangers pack was to get some of the Kickstarter content like Alpha and the Replacement Rangers out to retail and out to, kind of out to people who don't or can't get the big Kickstarter box. But fan response to it was a little bit mixed. And, we'll see if that is like, a huge portion of our fan base already has got the Kickstarter box, and many of them are getting it. We're making it more available on the Renegade website. And so the value proposition of doing that is tricky, and it's one that we're, let's see. Consider doing a Foot Soldier deck with both Lava Lizards and Chillers in the same deployment deck. Ooh, I mean, okay, so for that set, right, like that would be one I would heavily consider only doing, like giving us two different locations, one for each, and you just you play with both, right? Like, basically kind of slip in Dark Horde, but like that would be something I would strongly consider for Lava Lizards and Chillers. God, they're fun designs too. That would require two enemy decks for them, which would be a little annoying. They're so different thematically, because otherwise with a set like that, you could do like a modal enemy deck where it's like, hey, if there's a Chiller in this location, this card does this. If there's a Lava Lizard, this card does that. But making that thematically good, like, work is tricky just because, like, they fight so differently, and it would be weird to give them both the same deck.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah.
I think we got them talking about SPD. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, hey, what was your favorite series?
Mine. Oh man, I would say Space. Honestly,
Space,
so I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Rise of the Psycho Rangers, and I think that was just the epitome of everything, of just seeing, for the show wise, to kind of lose Zordon and just kind of see these guys just trust this alien guy who's from KO35, just trying to work his way through things.
Andros being a young guy and kind of having and being this like lifeline for the team was a really interesting dynamic that changes things up a lot. Him being a flawed character as opposed to kind of this good dad figure that is Zordon.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
And he's quite powerful, so I'm really excited to see really read into the cards more once we get it going. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, are you excited particularly for Andros?
I am. I've always been a huge Andros fan, so I mean, I'm super excited to just, I don't know. It seemed like just it was a good support. Like everyone just supported Andros really well, and I can't wait to see where we're going with this.
Andros is going to be a fun leader. I think he kind of plays in a slightly different ballpark. He is another one of those like I don't like guard card. Like he is the like don't worry about guard, just get him. Like, and that was kind of anti-guard has ended up becoming a sub theme for stealth characters. So like Phantom Ranger has some anti-guard and Andros has anti-guard, and that is the idea that like Andros is like weirdly stealthy. He just like he sneaks all over the place. He's sneaky, which is a strange trait for a Red Ranger. Like that is not usually what the leader is up to, but like Andros is an excellent, he's a great spy. And so we kind of integrate that a bit. He's a fun deck.
I'm excited about that.
Let's see. We got, would we consider doing Cogs as foot soldiers? We've heard there's a lot of fan response for Cogs. We're looking into how we can do Cogs. We would like to, certainly. How quickly that will happen is much more difficult to say, but it is definitely on our radar as something that we know that fans have been requesting a lot.
Looks like they're also asking for Psycho Silver already.
I mean, if we do Psycho Silver, oh god, like the thing is we never fight Psycho Silver, right? Like at best Psycho Silver would probably be something like an alternate sculpt for the Silver Ranger.
That would be awesome.
Right? That would be cool. I think that'd be kind of a fun promo to do, but like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I've got like that promo slot can often be quite contested, depending on the kind of content that we're doing.
It looks like we got another question here saying, are there any plans for stuff taken straight from the comics like Beyond the Grid?
I mean, we've definitely done comic exclusive characters before, like Lord Draken, Black Dragon, and Ranger Slayer. Beyond the Grid certainly has some cool stuff in it. Although I think for many of them, players would be more excited to see them in their normal forms, right? Like the Solar Ranger version of Cam, the Green Samurai Ranger, like his Solar Ranger form is really cool, but personally, and I think the Ninja Storm fans would rather see Cam in his samurai outfit, right? That's kind of what they want to see. And so it's definitely more likely we would do the Beyond the Grid team in their traditional forms before we would do them in their cool solar outfits. As cool as the solar outfits would be. But like, Solar Ranger is certainly pretty popular. The new Omega Rangers are quite popular. Like, I think they're cool. They are definitely on the list of possibilities and things that we are excited to explore.
There's just so many options.
There are, but like, we don't want to leave the show fans out to dry. As I know that there are a lot of people who they want to see Dino Charge. They want to see,
Dino Charge.
God, Dino Charge would be so hard. Like,
it's
there's so many Rangers. There's so many Rangers.
There really are.
It's
how many blues do they actually have, right?
Yeah, how many different colored plastics do we need to dig up? But Dino Charge is definitely one of the most requested series as well. Like, so we want to look into that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Let's see.
So it looks like we have time for just a few more questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, we'll call this in 5 minutes. So hit me with your best shot. Let's see.
So
SPD has.
go ahead. That's the one I was gonna say.
SPD had a monster known as Slate who would copy other villains' abilities. Basically, a bad guy version of Legendary Ranger. Could we see a randomized Legendary Master mode in the game for a Slate-type monster? So randomizing enemy decks is much harder because they don't have a uniform back. So like saying like, oh, shuffle a bunch of monster decks together is much harder to ask for, right?
Mhm.
Whereas shuffling a bunch of Ranger combat cards together, way easier. Like, hey, you all have the uniform back. I think it's certainly not impossible. The other big thing is that as the game goes on, we have fewer slots for Monsters of the Week. Just, kind of the things we want to produce. The Monster of the Week appear for like 1 or 2 episodes. It is generally much more exciting for fans to see the lieutenants and the bosses of the seasons, right? Like, if we did Beast Morphers, you want to see Blaze, Roxy, and Scrozzle. You don't care necessarily about any of the individual Monsters of the Week, even if they have some really cool designs. Like,
Yeah.
I love the designs and gimmicks of a lot of the Monsters of the Week. But it's tough, particularly when we do seasons that are like even the slightly less popular seasons. Pretty much every season has their own fan base,
Right.
and it would feel like a disservice. And every time we do one season, we are simultaneously not doing every other season of Power Rangers, right? So the more content we do for a particular season, including like an individual Monster of the Week, it would have to be a really cool and popular Monster of the Week to justify not doing one of the lieutenants or one of the bosses from another series, right? Like, the most recent villain pack has Thrax and Divatox in with the most requested Monsters of the Week that we didn't include from Mighty Morphin.
Yes. Like King Sphinx was a big one that I remember everyone asking for.
Yeah. We got the Ivan question that we always get. I feel like we need to we should just pin something for that, but Ivan is tricky because of rights. We would love to do Ivan, but it is like, yes, we would absolutely love to do Ivan, but it is very, very difficult to do because the rights are not owned by Hasbro. They are owned by Sony, I think. The movie rights of the Power Rangers first movie are not owned by Saban or Hasbro in the same way that all the rest of the content is.
As fun as it would be, but
as fun as it would be, I would there's nothing I would like more than to put down that miniature and go like, teenagers, like, just vamping it up. Like, Ivan is a great villain. Like,
yes.
I think we can all agree Ivan is a wonderful villain. But it is very unlikely for him to ever appear in Heroes of the Grid, unfortunately, and it makes me sad every time I think about it. But yeah. Fox. It was Fox who had the rights. But yeah. Let's see, I think we got time for.
Can't wait. So you said that you're gonna be. I know we can't get much details, but you said that there might be some more things happening in Renegade Con. So
I'm really excited for the panel workshop. We're doing a special thing for Renegade Con for Heroes of the Grid that will give you a bit of a behind-the-scenes look at some of the game's development, and I'm really excited to share that with people. Again, October 9th to 11th. We can put up a link again. Let's see.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Just because, the first one that we had earlier this year was so great. We got some really great content, and
it was fun.
We got this. Let's see how many more things we can squeeze out of Scott.
Yeah, right? Let's see. Last questions. Come on. Could be silly, could be serious, could be about games.
Who's your favorite villain?
Me personally?
Yeah, for you personally.
I really like the comic villains just because partly because they're really recent. I love the arc for Ranger Slayer, who I guess is an anti-hero, I guess, more so.
Right.
But I think my favorite monster, I just love Pumpkin Rapper so much. Or Pudgy Pig. Like, Pumpkin Rapper and Pudgy Pig are both maximum Power Rangers to me.
Yes.
like is really hard for me to like not think about them when I think about like what it is that Power Rangers is. It's like, you know, cool superheroes fighting the wackiest monsters. Let's see, when will we get to play scenario 13? That is a good
After
question.
12.
12 will be done soon. Scenario
Yeah.
13 is actually a little bit behind right now. Like, it's just, you know, things have been a lot. But we're working on it. Like, we've got the concept for it. It's in testing right now.
Yeah.
It'll be cool.
And I just gotta say, you know, thank you so much for doing all these extra scenarios and just kind of keeping the game alive and keeping the fans just, you know, looking forward to something new. Like,
Yeah, it's
every
been
month, you guys are just cranking them out. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah, and hanging out with the community and, like, you know, working on the game has definitely been a big thing for me in the last several months. It's been a good lifeline for me to have that.
Yeah.
That nice thing that I can always look forward to working on and hanging out in the chat threads and watching the community reactions. It's been great. I love the community. Love you, Rangers. Oh man, I'm so excited for what we got coming.
Yeah, thank you so much again for this time, Jonathan. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again at Renegade Con.
Yeah, me too. All right, I guess now's probably a good time to call it. What do we think?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've given them enough stuff to think about and maybe look at scenarios that they haven't tried playing yet. So.
Thank you guys so much for playing the scenarios. I hope you guys keep having fun with them, and here's to a whole bunch more.